Hello everybody, and welcome to my Overwatch preview video. I've recently gone into the closed beta. It's still the first week of closed beta, and it's pretty dang closed. But I did get in, and I've been playing a whole heck of a lot of Overwatch. In fact, all of this footage is taken from when I first started, and I was learning the game, but I've put in so much time in Overwatch since this was recorded, even though it's only been like a couple days. I've put in, I'm not even joking, 11 hours straight today. I'll talk about that in a moment. However, if you have no idea what the heck Overwatch is, it's a new game coming out from Blizzard. By the way, if you don't know what Overwatch is, you've literally been living under a rock. I mean, the hype for this game is obscene. But it's a new game coming out from Blizzard. It's a new IP. It's the first IP in, I think, what is 17 years, which is a pretty big deal. And not only that, but it's something they've never done before. It's a shooter. And it's a really good shooter at that. It is a arena shooter. It's kind of the genre that we call it. A lot of people will compare it to TF2, but I think the shooting feels a lot like Unreal Tournament. In fact, I mean, Unreal Tournament is another arena shooter. It draws a lot of inspiration from that and Quake. But yeah, sure, there are some similarities to TF2. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. But overall, the game is just a really solid shooter, right? At the core, if you took everything else away, they did a really good job making a shooter. Now, everything else on top of that really just kind of brings it all together. And what do I mean by like an arena shooter? Well, arena shooters are typically defined as objective-based arenas, either that or something like a skirmish or like capture the flag or stuff like that. However, it's really fast-paced. There requires a lot of skill involved. I'm not saying there's not a lot of skill involved in things like Call of Duty or, I mean, something that does require a lot of skill, which is Counter-Strike, but arena shooters are typically way faster, require you to have a lot more twitch abilities compared to those other games. I mean, there's no like aiming down sights. You can like fly around with some characters. It's crazy. Speaking of the characters, that's kind of what makes Overwatch unique, which is the fact that there are no like classes. There are types of characters that you can have, such as attackers, defenders. You can have tanks and supports. So you can have basically people with giant shields absorbing a ton of damage for your team while you hide behind it. And you can have healers and support characters behind that, keeping everybody alive. But you also have, you know, your typical attackers and more defense kind of characters. And this is what makes the game unique, because each of these characters has like a different skill set. For example, Symmetra is a support character that can throw down like a teleporter, so when the defenders die or the attackers die, they don't have to go all the way back to base to respawn. They'll respawn in the base, and then there'll be a teleporter there that they can go into, and they can teleport to another part of the map, wherever that Symmetra player put the portal down. Or you could be like Pharah, which is a character with a giant jetpack, and she can launch herself into the air, and she can hover after she launches into the air, but she has a rocket launcher, which is a unique combo with the rocket pack, because while you're flying around, if you had a gun, it's pretty easy to shoot stuff, right? But if you have a rocket launcher, it's a little harder to hit things because the rockets have more travel times than a bullet does. So you really got to lead targets, and it takes a lot more skill. That being said, at the current time in the beta, she is pretty powerful. She does quite a bit of splash damage, and a lot of people are able to make some big plays with her. But every character has their own ultimate, and then a subset of skills. Some characters are able to, you know, throw down turrets. Some characters can even become turrets themselves because they're a robot and they can transform. And it's just really rad that each of these characters, while their skill set changes, and there are quite a few characters to choose from at the moment, right? And there's more being added, then it gets into this realm of almost being like a MOBA, because each of these characters have character themselves. You know, they do their own voice acting and the call-outs and everything as it's going on. There's a huge backstory to the game, as it turns out, which is really, really cool, because it's not something you typically see in, you know, shooter games, to be honest. But with that being said, you have, you know, these ability sets too, which just drastically change the way the game is played because of one simple little thing. At this point in the game, I don't know if this will ever change, but you can absolutely change to any other character in the game. So while you're playing and you die, you can respawn as one of the other characters, and there can be multiples of that character in a game, even on the same team. You could have 6 Pharahs, for example, because it's, you know, 6v6. So you could have like 6 Pharahs versus 6 Reinhardts, which is like a big tanky guy, if you really wanted to. I wouldn't suggest it because the Reinhardts would probably get wrecked pretty hard. Though I have seen some pretty good Reinhardts snipe some Pharahs out of the air. But with that, you know, you have like this core gameplay which evolves out of it of needing to counter what your enemy is doing. So if your enemy does start rolling a ton of tanks all of a sudden, you need to be able to counter that by running things that can, you know, kill them or knock them apart and keep your own team alive and stuff like that. So it's really cool. Like a whole meta game is birthed out of the fact that you can easily switch between characters. Whether or not that'll change, because, you know, this is a closed beta, who knows, right? We'll see in the future. But at this time, it is really, really cool that that is a thing, especially when it gets into multiplayer, like competitive multiplayer, which I will talk about in a second. But the very last thing I wanted to mention that is typically sought as the like primary thing that makes this game like TF2 is the objective-based stuff. The objectives at the moment in the beta, there's 2 types of maps. There is well, I guess there's 3 because one of them combines the 2, but that doesn't really count, let's be honest. So there's 2 objectives. There is either you escort a payload from one side of the map to another, and the offensive team tries to escort it, and the defensive team tries to make sure that they don't escort it to, you know, the other parts of the map. Whereas the other objective is like more of a capture and hold. So there's like 2 points on the map. You run over to one of the points and you stand on it, and it captures. If there's another enemy player within the point, it stops the capture from happening. And then when that captures, it moves on to another point to go and capture. So those are kind of like the 2 base game modes at the moment as far as objectives are concerned. But the thing with those objectives is that it changes based on the map. So like, you know, the payload may feel a lot different on one map compared to another, just because of the natural choke points that are made at certain parts. And as you're escorting that payload, for example, you do gain checkpoints as the offensive team, because you see like the clock, you know, ticking down, and at the beginning of the game it's like 5 minutes. You're like, what, this is a 5-minute like long match? It's actually pretty quick. But it technically isn't if you have an offensive team that's actually going to do stuff, because as you get to certain checkpoints, say you move the payload to, you know, a very specific spot on the map, and they're always marked so you can always tell where the checkpoints are. Or if you capture a point on one of the capture maps, then what happens is it checkpoints you, it gives you more time as the offensive team to try to finish, and then the defensive team, their whole goal is just to keep you from doing that. They're trying to run out the clock as quickly as they can by keeping as many people off the objectives as possible, because if the offensive team is getting to the checkpoints and they're getting more time, yada, yada, yada. You get the idea. But where this really starts to come into play, and as I said earlier, is the competitive multiplayer. When you're playing with people together, right? And you're not just queuing as a solo player. And I learned this firsthand today after I played 11 hours of the game. You see, I logged in today knowing that d.va was going to be playing, because I had seen him talk about it, and him and I, you know, certainly play a lot of other games, right? So like Here's the Storm and whatnot. But I saw that he was going to play Overwatch, and literally nobody on my friends list except Rarjar is in Overwatch. And it's like, oh man, like I don't have anybody to really game with, and I don't have anybody to queue with, so I end up just queuing solo, and it's not as fun, right? Just it's that MOBA element, right, that the game has. It's just not as fun. So I saw that he was going to be playing, so I ended up queuing against him because I wanted to kill him some bit, so I did. And then he was going to be streaming all day anyways while he was playing the game, so I joined in. We were playing on the same team for a little bit until we ended up joining with JP, who was also streaming. And basically what happened is we got a 6-man team together to queue. The queue was going to take way too freaking long just because there's not enough people in the beta at the moment. So like the amount of 6v6 teams that are like queuing against each other just are super limited. The thing is, we realized this, so we got another 6 people together and we did a private match 6v6. So we had 12 people all on TeamSpeak with each other playing against each other. So we would switch up the teams each round, and it was really awesome because before I knew it, I was having a hard time finding somebody to play with. So I'd queue up with Day9, and then suddenly I'm playing with people like Summit, I'm playing with JP, I'm playing with all of these amazing streamers that just, like, I watch, right? Like, I watch them play these games, and I was watching them play it when I didn't get into the beta at first. But what I ended up doing is, becoming really familiar with the game very quickly, because all of us, let's be honest, nobody's had much experience with the game. So the amount of practice that we've had playing in groups is very limited. But what this allowed us to do was kind of get a grasp on what the meta would change to be based on the characters that, and how they are balance-wise. And what I mean by this is, like, we would queue up against each other, and maybe the teams have changed at that point, and we had just played like several matches against each other. Well, then we know that, oh, that one player is really good on Widowmaker, and then there's another player that's, oh man, they're really good at Bastion. So you don't really want them like on those characters. And when you see them on those characters, you instantly want to counter them. So, say like I was playing Pharah, well, they would then pull out the snipers and kill me as Pharah, because that was the character that I played a lot. It just happened to be a character that I really enjoy, just based on the way the character feels in combat. But then, we would get to certain objectives and we'd switch out to characters that we either needed at that point in time, or we just were better at with the current group that we had. And it was just so cool playing with all of those guys, because it was like we were developing, what the current like competitive nature of the game would be, and what I saw in that moment was how competitive this game can be, and the potential for things like esports with it. It was so much fun. I can't even describe to you guys how much fun I had in that 11 hours, and everybody felt the same way. Like, by the end of it, we were all like, this is the way to play the game, as a 6v6, where you reconvene afterwards and you chat with each other, and you're like, oh man, you got me on that one stupid snipe, and that play of the game, man, that was bad. I can't believe like that it chose that as the play of the game. It was so incredibly fun, and I can't wait for you guys to be able to get your hands on this game, because I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that the base game that they have come up with is so polished and so good that it absolutely lives up to any of the hype that was given to this game when it was first announced. Like, this may be the closed beta, and they may not at this point have announced anything to do with a business model. We don't know if it's going to be free to play or if you buy it. We have no idea, right? But what we do know is that the game that they created at the very core is so good and so polished that all they need to do is just keep adding more characters and more maps, and maybe come up with a reasonable business model, and they've got me hooked. Many of you don't know this, but it is absolutely a fact that I play a lot of Unreal Tournament. I grew up on that game. Arena shooters were my thing. In fact, I started with Quake, and then I moved into Unreal Tournament. But that was like my jam growing up. And more recently with the Unreal Tournament pre-alpha, I've been playing a lot of that. Which, by the way, if you're not in the Overwatch beta and you really like games like this, then go download the Unreal Tournament pre-alpha. It's free, and it's really, really good. It's kind of the same idea. It's got a really good base core game, and it's incredible. But I am really looking forward to the future of this game. I'm really looking forward to the upcoming BlizzCon to see what they have to announce for it. But it is so freaking good. And if I get my hands on beta keys, I am giving them to you guys because you need to play it. It's one of those games you just need to play to understand how good of a game it is. But with that being said, my voice hurts after playing this game for 11 hours with a ton of streamers. And I'm shot, man, so I'm out. Until next time, we shall see you guys next time.